Welcome to Little Home Projects. In this video, I clean up my fireplace, which has been sitting through a year-long renovation. I have an older style gas fireplace. Before we started a renovation, I took the fireplace covers off and set them aside so they'd be safe during the whole process. This fireplace has changed quite a bit since we started the reno. The stone has all been painted. I've also painted the metal with a matte black high heat paint. And I've put it all back together, and I've decided that now I need to get it all cleaned up so that it looks good for the winter season. There's a significant amount of dust and dirt inside, as well as a thick film on the inside of the glass. I want to clean it all out so that I feel safe using it, and it doesn't smell dusty when it's burning. I still have several of the components disassembled, because I haven't finished reassembling since the renovation, and this makes it really easy to see how dirty it is on the inside. Before I start grabbing anything though, I want to make sure I have that pilot light turned off. It makes things hot all by itself, and I don't want to burn my hands. Turning it off is really simple. Just find the knob that's marked pilot on off, and it controls the gas flow overall. So turn it back to the pilot position, then usually it's a press in and twist to the off position. I've let it cool down for about a half an hour to make sure nothing's too hot. And before I take anything apart, a really good idea is to take a few pictures of the fireplace so you know how everything's supposed to go back together. If you misplace something, if you want to put the blocks back in the same order they came out in, a couple good pictures will make that a lot easier. A lot of other fireplaces that I see online all have sort of hinges and clips that come apart pretty easily. Mine's a bit of an older style though, and I needed to unscrew these different components. So for me it was just a matter of finding the right bit, which was a medium Phillips head, and just getting everything taken apart slowly. I grabbed a couple trays to make sure I wouldn't lose any screws. To start, there was a set of 4 screws holding on the main front plate, and then after I had that off, there was a set of screws at the top holding the glass in place, and a set of screws at the bottom as well. With those loosened off, the glass plane came right out. I made sure to have a spot ready for me to put it, and I laid it face down so that the dirty side was up. At first it might seem like all these little bits of fluff are some crud or something that's fallen out of the fireplace itself, but really this is all a sort of a wool, a rock wool kind of material that glows red when it gets hot. So you want to make sure you save all this and then you put it back in roughly the same position you took it out. And you can see how dirty it is as I'm taking this all out. You can see the layer of white dust. I think that's probably mostly drywall dust. This fireplace was definitely due for a cleaning. With that stuff set aside, I took out each of the fire bricks and found that they're actually quite light and soft. These are, I thought they'd be much heavier, much more solid. They are a very fluffy material, almost like a sort of sponge rock. I think mine was actually in backwards because when I took it out, it sort of seemed like it was just sitting there wrong. So I'm going to put it back in this way instead of back in the way it was. And you can see how dirty this is right here. Definitely have a bit of a damp cloth or something to wipe your hands if you want to keep other things from getting dirty. As I removed each of these logs, I kept them in the order that they came out in. That way when I put them back together, I know exactly which ones go first. I was curious how the rest of the components came apart. I was hoping to get a good look at the fan in the back. I feel like it hasn't been working properly, but as I was playing with the different bits, I found that they were in pretty solid, and I didn't want to dismantle things too far, given that I'm not a gas expert. I ran a first pass with a vacuum to get all the big bits that were almost obvious. This isn't getting all the little sticky bits of dust, but it is getting rid of any sand or debris that has really collected over time. Next, I moved to a used paintbrush to kick up the dust and really get a good clean going on all the different components. This way I can give them a bit of a scrub without being too rough with them. I found the brush worked really well to kick up the dust, and the vacuum just sucked it right up so there was none of mess. I could feel a little bit in my nose here and there, but for the most part it really went straight into the vacuum. I used the crevice tool to get in as far as I could in different areas just to get as much cleaning as possible done all at once. I probably could get some kind of a duster like a Swiffer or something on a stick and get in here and really get the dust kicked up, but this seemed to be just fine. Something that might be easy to forget is you want to make sure you clean the underside of the top of the fireplace. You can see here there's a bunch of carbon buildup. It came off very easily, just kind of brushed right off. This stuff was very messy. If you got that on your fingers, it really kind of did soak in, and you can see how the vacuum just sucks up the dust. I used the crevice tool again on the bottom piece of the fireplace. This way I could get right to the back of the fireplace. There's a lot of sand and dust down here as well. It's just collected over time. I used the same brush and technique with the vacuum on each of the individual logs to give them a good light scrub. I would say with this material of these logs, you want to be pretty gentle with it. Anything that's truly abrasive would probably scrape the log finish right off. So this paintbrush seemed to work quite well. As I looked around online, I found that you are supposed to use a type of wax polish on the inside of the glass. I don't have that, and I didn't want to spend the money on it, so I decided to go ahead with just plain glass cleaner. Before I used the glass cleaner though, I gave it a basic wipe down with just a dry cloth, just to get rid of any light grit that might be on the inside. The glass cleaner did seem to work, although I had to do several passes before I was finished. I'm guessing that the proper type of cleaner probably works better, but it wasn't difficult to use the basic glass cleaner. It got a lot of stuff off, and it was already free because I already had it. I probably washed it about 4 times with the glass cleaner before I was happy with the cleanliness of it, as well as leaving no streaks behind. The very left and right edges of the glass didn't come very clean, and I have a feeling that's really where that custom glass cleaner would have done the best job, but it wasn't necessary for mine. Now that everything's done, clean, and ready to be assembled, I checked my reference photos so I knew how it was all going to go back together, and I started putting it back piece by piece. As I was putting the big pieces back in, I found that the second piece had a few holes to go on pegs inside the fireplace, so this would go back at the exact same spot, no problem. It looks like it's gone in a few times, possibly in the wrong spot, because there's a hole in a few different locations. Probably people didn't quite know where it was supposed to be. I went with the center one, which was the deepest one, and put it back there. After putting it back together the way it was when I took it apart, I decided that it probably wasn't right, because it didn't seem correct that you'd be looking at the underside of this fake log. I feel like you really want to see more of the bark texture than you would of this sort of clay wood texture. So I decided to change it up a bit and give him a bit of a flip or a rotate to sort of see more of that, and I think it looks better because of it. I put the rock wool back basically where I think it was. I didn't get a really good sharp picture of the position of this stuff, but I think just as long as it's not covering the holes but is nice and close, it's probably about right. As I was reassembling, I dusted each of the pieces as I put them back in. Some of these pieces are a bit beat up, and I really should take the time, maybe in another video, to give them another paint job as well. This red is the old original red of the fireplace cover that I painted black, so these pieces still have the original color, and I need to eventually come around and finish the job. But for now, I just want it working for the winter. With that bottom plate on, I made sure that the sort of insulating ribbon material on the top of the glass is in the exact same spot it was before. I fit the cover piece on and the gold trim over top of that. I decided to give it a test run before I finished assembling everything to make sure that it was working properly and that I didn't miss any major dirty spots inside the glass. When I first fired it up, it almost instantly fogs right up, which I think is pretty normal for a gas fireplace. That fogging is sort of what causes the film to build up on the inside of the glass in the first place. But once it heats up, that humidity disappears and it looked just fine. I was happy with that as a successful test, so I went ahead and reassembled everything else. Just a matter of putting the cover plate back on in line with the screw holes, and then remembering where all the different pieces go, because some of these pieces I've had off for over a year, and I've just sort of pulled them all together to get it reassembled. And I was afraid I was missing some screws, but as it turned out, I put all the screws back in the holes, so wherever there needed to be a screw, there was a screw in that hole, so it was going together pretty nicely. I did have to take out the top set of screws before I could put the next plate on though. They were in the way and I couldn't slide it in all the way. But with those taken off, I could position this as needed and attach nice and securely. When these separate individual louver pieces went in, I really felt that the matte black paint job that we gave it is really starting to work well for it. It sort of gave it that good, solid feeling. So I was really happy to see all this black steel coming together again. The last piece that needed to be attached was the gold louvers at the bottom. The gold is not really the color we would go with this black fireplace now, but I don't think that the spray paint would have taken to this material the same way that it took to the other metal bits. So we'll have to give that a test, but for now, to keep it functioning, gold will work just fine. I'll end up the screws from that piece of material and bolted it all down. This ended up being the one piece that I wasn't completely happy with how it went back together. I'm not sure if I've done anything wrong here, but it didn't seem to sort of go all the way back in to where I think it should finally sit. It sort of sat on top of that red piece of steel. I feel like it should sit underneath. So wasn't exactly sure. So I adjusted that a little bit more and raised it and lowered it and played with it for a bit, but in the end I wasn't perfectly happy with it. But it isn't really noticeable to anyone but me. If I've done something wrong in the setup, let me know. With all of that assembled, the last step was to clean up, and I was a bit surprised at how much of a mess I had made in front of the fireplace. Sweeping up the dust was fine, but some of the greasy soot had gotten onto the stone in front of the fireplace, so this required a bit more scrubbing, and I didn't get all of it out completely. At first I tried just water, thinking it was just a bit of soot. That didn't really work. It helped a little bit. But then I switched to some household cleaner, and that made a bit of a difference, but I think that a better approach would have been to just put down a blanket or something to protect the stone. I think prevention here might have been the best approach as opposed to trying to clean it up after. But a bit of scrubbing made it mostly not noticeable. And with that, I was done. I do have some wires coming out of either end here. One's the power supply for the fan, the other is the wire control for the thermostat. I'm not 100% sure where I'll leave these down the road, but for now, I just tuck them off to the side. It was a really nice feeling seeing this thing come together after such a long time of not having it assembled or being able to use it. And since we've finished this, I've used it every night the last few nights. It's really quite pretty, so. And it does throw off an awful lot of heat. This also being the beginning of winter, I've decided to jump on the bandwagon and supply a nice long fireplace video to YouTube. Not that I expect it'll do really well, I just kind of like the idea that it's a fake fireplace going onto the TV instead of a real one. Not sure if I see many of those, but I'll put a link in the description below for that video, and that'll be, I don't know, 1 or 2 hours of gas fireplace you can play on your TV. I'll even make two, one nice and close, and one that shows the fake mantle in front of the fireplace as well. I really like the meta idea of it being not real on your TV. Well, if you liked this video, or if you found it informative, please hit the like button. I do try to put out new videos each week, so if you'd like to see more from Little Home Projects, hit subscribe. And don't forget to check out my fireplace videos that I'll post alongside here. My cat makes an appearance in one of them, so you don't want to miss that. This is Little Home Projects. Thanks for watching.